People just don't realize their brain can help them do more, better, and do it faster.
Hey, everybody, we're talking to Dr. Heather Collins today. What an amazing woman. She is a cognitive neuroscientist and a keynote speaker, has some incredible stories about unlocking the brain's hidden potential and even sharing the stage with a pop music icon. She's also a great new friend of mine. You don't want to miss this incredible conversation.
Welcome to The Last 10%. Your host, Dallas Burnett, dives into incredible conversations that will inspire you to finish well and finish strong. Listen as guests share their journeys and valuable advice on living in the last 10%. If you are a leader, a coach, a business owner, or someone looking to level up, you are in the right place. Remember, you can give 90% effort and make it a long way, but it's finding out how to unlock the last 10% that makes all the difference in your life, your relationships, and your work. Now, here's Dallas.
Welcome. I am Dallas Burnett, sitting in my 1905 Koch brothers barber chair in Thrive Studios. But more importantly, today we have a great guest. Dr. Heather Collins is a brilliant cognitive neuroscientist who helps people tap into their super brains to crush the last 10% in their work and lives. Plus, she's got some wild tales like performing with Madonna. I'm already excited. Welcome to the show, Dr. Collins.
Thank you so much, Dallas. I'm happy to be here.
This is something that we'll get into in a minute because I'm really curious about Madonna. You've got a tremendous background, just variety. And so you're a PhD, you've got postdoctoral fellowships. How do you get inspired, to do that? First, neuroscientist, oh my gosh. What kind of brought you to that? And then how do you fit keynote speaking into neuroscience? How does that all fit together?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as you and I have talked about, I'm an unlikely combination of things all rolled up into one package. I started out my curiosity about how people work when I was a kid, really just observing people and thinking, how do humans do what they do? How do we do what we do? And ended up majoring in cognitive psychology to try to figure out how the mind works. And cognitive psychology is the study of learning, memory, thinking, decision-making, problem solving, everything that involves your prefrontal cortex right here up front. And this is the part of your brain that handles incredibly complex things that we do every day, from deciding what you're going to eat to breakfast, to planning your vacation, to deciding who your partner is going to be. So I was really interested in that. And about that time, MRI research started to become more prevalent. And I thought, I've dug into the behavioral aspect of how people do what they do. What about the brain aspect? Let's get down to the cellular level. What's actually happening in our brains to enable us to do everything we do every day, to walk, talk, eat, to have this conversation with you right now, to decide how we handle an unexpected situation and to remember things that are really important to us. So one thing led to another. I ended up, as you said, earning my PhD in psychological and brain sciences, cognitive neuroscience, completed postdoctoral fellowships in brain imaging. And I noticed something really interesting. And now I'm going to ask you a question, Dallas. Do you pay your taxes?
Yes.
Reluctantly?
Yes, reluctantly.
None of us are happy about it, but we do it. And if you pay your taxes, you're paying for a lot of this brain research that happens.
Yes.
And the challenging thing about this research is these research scientists, such as myself, work really hard, carefully craft these research studies, glean important insights and results. And then these results get published in scientific journals to be consumed by other scientists. So I became increasingly frustrated with the missing part of that equation. And that's you. That's everybody who's paying for this research. You're not really getting a big return on investment out of that. And that's what led me to want to actually speak about the brain and how people can tap in and unlock their super brains. Is you're paying for this research. We all have brains. Our brains are incredibly complex, incredibly powerful. And, if you really want to get to that last 10%, if you want to finish strong, if you want to finish
Mhm.
hard, you want to finish faster, you really do have to tap in and unlock your super brain. And luckily,
Mm.
we can take information from all this great science that's been published and show you exactly how to do that with a few simple strategies.
Oh, man. We're definitely gonna get into some of that. That's exciting. I'm already pumped. This is gonna be fun today. So, first of all, we were talking before the show, and I asked you because you're into some heavy research like you just described. I said, "How does one go from being heavy involved in research to being like, I'm gonna be the person on the stage that's ready to share all this?" You were telling me a fun story about when all that started, so share that with our listeners.
Yeah, a lot of my colleagues who are also in research and science do not like public speaking. They're not alone. Most of the public dislikes public speaking. In fact, survey after survey shows that public speaking is the number one fear of people in the United States. And
Yes, yes.
yet, if you take me and throw me on a stage and have people fire questions at me, that's my happy place. That's where I want to be.
I love it. That's so great. That's so great. And you knew early on that you were comfortable on stage. How did that happen?
Yeah, I grew up as a dancer. My grandma, when she was young, was put into tap classes. And that's because she had polio when she was 2, and they thought this would help strengthen her leg. And she thought when I
Uh,
was a small child, maybe I would like to dance too. And she was
mm,
right. She enrolled me in dance classes. I kept going. And that started when I was 6. So from the time I was 6, I really enjoyed being on stage. And all throughout my
wow.
childhood and even into graduate school, I danced on a regular basis. I did tap, jazz, ballet, Hawaiian, Tahitian. And in college, I was in a modern dance company for 2 years. And I still have
Wow.
my tap shoes and my portable tap floor and look for any opportunity to make a little noise with my feet and do a little
That's so
dancing.
good. That's so good. That is so good. I love it. So it was just a natural part of your growing up and you just got exposed to it and just fell in love with it. That's really exciting. You talk about tap into your super brain and how people can move from a neuroscience perspective. What are some things that you see that's so common that tend to trip people up? What are some of the biggest pitfalls that you see?
That's a great question. I think there are several that happen. One is that people just don't realize their brain can help them do more, better, and do it faster.
Mm,
So a lot of people I talk to say, "Oh, I'm chugging along just fine. Why would I need to make my brain work better? My brain works just fine." And the idea
mm,
is, yes, you can get through your daily life. Your brain is working just fine. But
mm,
what if you could actually unlock that super brain potential and
mm,
really help you
mm,
get to the crux of your podcast, right? Get that last 10%
mm,
done that's so
mm,
difficult. What if it didn't
mm.
have to be so
Yeah.
difficult? What if it could be
Mm,
easier? What if you could derive joy from it? I think
mm.
another big challenge is when now don't tell anyone, but probably just a secret between us. If I have to pick a favorite area of brain research, it's definitely memory. And a lot of
Ooh,
people
ooh.
say, "Oh, I have memory slips," or "I'm concerned that my memory is not as good as it used to be." And really, the thing about memory is you get out of it exactly what you put in. So with
Okay,
a few
okay.
simple strategies, you can make it more likely that you'll actually take something from the outside world, get it into your brain, and then
Mm.
be able to recall it later when you want to.
So when you say that, it's a strategy of intaking the information because, like, we all hear these commercials on television, like "Improve your memory, buy this supplement for $29.99." So you're saying though that it's more on how you're bringing the information in, or how does that work?
There are 3 things we can work on. Encoding is taking
Mm,
information from the outside world and actually making sure it gets into your brain. And then we have
mhm,
storage. So when it's in
mm,
there, making sure it's being stored well. And then we have retrieval, and that is being able to take it from the inside of your brain out and being able to talk about it, discuss it, think about it whenever you want. And so there are ways to improve all of those. When we
Yeah.
talk about storage, do you like blueberries?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Love blueberries.
Blueberries have been shown in research studies to actually improve your hippocampal functioning. And that is, those blueberries have anthocyanins in them that specifically help your memory.
Huh.
So now if you're getting, you can get fresh blueberries, frozen blueberries. If you're getting them in the pastry, blueberry scone at the bakery, those blueberries are probably not so active anymore. So try to stick with fresh or frozen if you can.
Blueberry donuts don't count, listeners of the last 10%. Blueberry donuts don't count.
They're
You got to get the
delicious.
real fresh
Who doesn't
thing.
love a blueberry donut? But let's not quite call that a health food for your brain. And
Yeah, not a brain
there
health food.
certainly
Okay.
are retrieval strategies too that you can use to make it more likely that you're able to pull information out when you need it. One of the things I do focus on though is how do you get it in the first place? And that's because in everyday life, that's what slips us up. All right, Dallas, another hard question for you.
Okay.
You
All
ever
right. All
lose
right.
your keys?
Yes, I actually do. Yes, I do lose my keys. I will say I limit the places that I can put them so I lose them less.
Hey, that's a strategy, and that's really
It's
smart.
a strategy.
That's a strategy.
But yes, if I don't put them in their proper place, then I'm all over the map. Yeah, I will misplace
Yeah,
them.
and most people misplace their keys, and they say, "I have a terrible memory. I always forget where I put my keys." The secret is that's not actually a memory problem. That's an attention problem. So you can think of attention as the gateway to memory. So if you're not paying attention to something, it's not going to make its way in. And if it doesn't make its way in, it can't make its way out because it's never there in the first place. And one of the reasons that forgetting keys is such a universal experience is that oftentimes when we walk through the door of our home and we have our keys in one hand, we're not thinking
Yeah.
about where we put our keys. That is,
No.
we're not paying attention to our keys. We're paying
Yes.
attention to other
Yes.
things. Maybe the dog is
Yeah.
barking. Maybe the kids or the
Yeah.
spouse or the partner wants
Yeah.
something. Maybe there's a loud
Yeah.
noise and you're trying to figure out where it's coming from. Maybe you're thinking about what you're going to cook for dinner, or you're thinking about that really stressful meeting you had at the end of the workday. And
Yeah.
therefore, we don't pay attention to where we put our keys. And you actually struck on the solution. And that is, this is something we don't necessarily want to pay attention to or need to pay attention to. We don't need that to make it into our memory if we can figure out another strategy. And that strategy is
Yeah.
pick one place.
Yeah.
Have that place be as close to the door when you walk in as possible. What you want to do is 5, 6, 7, 8 times, you are going to have to pay attention and say to yourself, I'm putting my keys in the bowl on the counter
Yep.
next to the front door. But after you do
Yep.
that a few times, that'll actually become an automated behavior.
Well, there's so many things there. I think that's fascinating. I've never thought about memory as it relates to attention. It makes total sense. I've heard quotes like what you focus on is what you become or your reality. And it makes sense why if you're not focused on your keys, you could be holding the groceries or trying to, play with the kids, or like you said, dog barking, and it's not what's the main thing. And therefore it just, where they fall is where they fall, and lose that, whether it's keys or anything else. But there was a study one time I read out, I think it was out of Duke, and it said something like 43% of all of our behavior throughout the whole day is essentially like that we're not engaging in. Most of our behaviors are just pre-programmed that we're just going through. And it's like why you can drive to work that you've been driving to for 5 years and not even remember the trip, because you've gone through that routine so many times that, or like when you hang the key up so many times, you just don't even remember because you're like, this is what I do with it. I think that's fascinating, but it's also a bit terrifying, because I feel like it's a recipe for making good routines in your life. Because ultimately, if you're on autopilot almost half of the day, that's a lot of time that you're not thinking. Do you find that in your research to be accurate?
It's certainly an estimate, and I'm not sure exactly about the number, but it does highlight a really important phenomenon that I think most people aren't aware of, which is exactly what you brought up, that so much of our time during the day is spent on autopilot thinking. And I would say that autopilot can be used for good or it can be used for evil. Your brain can be used for good or it can be used
Yes.
for evil. The benefit of autopilot thinking is that it does free up resources in your brain for you to think about other
Mm.
things. So if
Mm.
you take the same route to work every day, you don't necessarily need to be thinking very deeply about where you're going or exactly when to take a right turn or a left turn. You don't need to think about it. Your brain already knows it. In
Mm-hmm.
essence, your brain has become an expert on this topic.
Mm.
And when a really interesting phenomenon happens, and that is a lot of people think that the more expert you are, the greater brain activation you have. In other words, the greater the brain resources you're using up. And it's actually the opposite. The more expert you
Mm.
are at something, the fewer brain resources you're using. And
Ah,
that's because your brain
interesting.
engages in effortful processing. So you can think of
Mm.
anything that requires effort requires more brain resources. Anything that doesn't require as much effort requires fewer brain resources. So when you're on autopilot driving to work, you're actually using fewer brain resources than if you were driving somewhere brand new. And
Mm.
that
Mm.
frees up your prefrontal cortex and
Mm.
your hippocampus and other areas of your brain to think about other things. So the
Mm.
benefit of this autopilot experience is that instead of thinking about where you're going on the way to work, you can think about these great, meaningful conversations that you're having with people on your podcast or who you want to
There
have
you
next.
go.
Or what are some really
Mm-hmm.
interesting questions you could bring up to spice up the podcast? So
Mm.
that's the benefit of autopilot. Now, there can be a cost
Mm.
to autopilot thinking as well. I was at South by Southwest 2 weeks ago giving a presentation there. And I spoke to a woman there, and
Wow.
she said that she's really frustrated that she feels like she's on autopilot most of the day. She gets ready for work, she goes to
Mm.
work, she does work, she comes home, and then she thinks, what did I do all day?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Like a rut. She feels like she's in a rut. Yeah.
exactly. And that kind of daily autopilot thinking over a really long period of time can make you feel like you're in a rut. And that doesn't feel very good
Mm-hmm.
either. That feels very
Mm-hmm.
frustrating. And one
Mm.
of the things you can do in that situation is you can actually use an external resource to trigger yourself to jump out of autopilot. So start with your cell phone or a timer on your computer, or if you have a digital assistant, set a timer or an alarm there. And that way, when that goes off, that's your cue to stop whatever you're doing and move aside and take a little time to think about something that you want to think about and really let your
Ooh,
brain
that's good.
roam a little bit free. And when you allow yourself that time for your brain to roam free and engage in free thinking, it really does wonders for your brain. First of all, it actually
Mm.
gives yourself a break from what you're doing, the task you're doing. It gives your brain time to refresh itself and renew its resources. And even though you're stepping away from it, your brain's actually still chugging on it, but it's in the background now.
Right.
And you're
Right.
refreshing your brain by activating all these brain regions that you weren't previously using by taking a few minutes to just engage in some free thinking. So it can give you
That's really
renewal, it can give you refreshment, it can actually increase your productivity when you do go back to whatever task you're doing because letting
mm.
your brain chew on something in the background it's a great way for your brain to figure out how to solve problems, how to tackle something with a new approach, or maybe how to shift that in a different direction that's better.
Nah, I love that. This is fascinating because what we have is we created a coaching system that we integrate into organizations that helps new leaders or technical leaders and any leader engage with their team members in a meaningful way with the hope of development over a long period of time. But the way that we started out our coaching sessions, which is once a month for 20 minutes ish, depending, is always asking 3 reflective questions that are definitely not yes, no, and definitely something that you probably haven't either thought about or you probably should think about. But it's just very self-reflective or reflecting on the team or why you do what you do. I almost put that in the same category. Do you see that as a positive in terms of would that offer some of the benefits because it's really forcing the person that's receiving this coaching to start their executive function,
Yeah.
really start thinking not yes, no, and engage in that kind of, where would I go in the world if money was no object? What would I do? Do you feel like the benefits of what you just described when somebody takes a break from that daily grind and does that, would that be possible to translate those same benefits to, those reflective questions with a coach that you're meeting with?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. A really interesting
Mm.
things happens with reflective questions too, when you're specifically saying you. And it sounds like that's what you're doing.
Mm. Yeah,
And when
yeah.
you say to somebody you, the really cool thing is you're tapping into this part of the brain deep in your brain that's activated for something called the self-reference effect. And that is this area of your brain's activated whenever you're thinking about something that's relevant to you. And in
Mm.
fact, I actually use this as a memory strategy for people too. If there's something that's really important that you need to remember and you want to take control of your brain and actively work to make a memory out of something, maybe that's a family vacation, or you're going to kill it, or you just killed it at this work event, you can stop and think about me. And your brain is selfish. Your brain loves you. Your brain's your biggest fan. And when you actually think about how something is related to you, you remember it better. And
Yeah.
so when
Okay.
you're tapping into the self-reference network in the brain and you're asking these leaders, how would you do this? How would you do that? It really taps into this network that they probably weren't using before. Because when they're
Mm.
thinking about their views on the team or the company or the organization, they're really thinking about it from a perspective of standing back from it, not that it's them
Yes.
directly involved in it.
Yes.
So what you're doing is
Yes.
putting them in the middle. You're not saying we're watching the circus and we have the popcorn. You're putting them in the middle of the circus as the ringleader.
That's exactly
And
right.
so I
That's
think that's a
exactly right.
great thing to do. Now, the fun thing is, well, we know communicating with people is also good, right? Generally
Yeah.
speaking, many brains are better than one brain. Our brains like to be
Right.
tickled. And when we talk with
Mm.
other people and they ask us questions we hadn't thought about before, that's novelty. And our brains seek
Mm.
out novelty. And that means when you're asking these leaders questions they hadn't thought about, that I'm guessing you get a lot of, oh, I hadn't thought about it before. Or I didn't think about it that
Mm.
way.
Sure. 100%.
So that
Absolutely.
response in their face and their eyes dart around and they probably look a little bit excited. That's novelty seeking right there. And our brains love
Mm.
novelty seeking. And so it's like you're feeding the brain candy and it's gobbling it up. And
Mm.
that's a really great thing to do. You can
Yeah.
also ask bizarre questions. So I think as adults,
Mhm.
we lose a lot of the sense of play or creativity that a 5-year-old has, for example. And our brains need that. Our brains need that kind of fuel. So you can even ask bizarre questions such as, Dallas, if I were to introduce you to a giraffe, what questions would you have for it?
Wow. You know, I don't know. What's it like seeing the world from that high up every day? Or is it really hard to run? Because I think they're fast. That is a very novel question. But it is fun because I can't help but laugh when I think about talking to a giraffe.
Yeah,
Like, I love that idea, the bizarre idea. I love it. You've
you're,
already given
you're
me something to
welcome.
think about now. The giraffe might make it into our coaching system. So I think there's two things I would love to hear your opinion on. As a leader, when we're leading a team, we're trying to help people make good decisions on a regular basis and establish healthy habits, both at home and at work. It's really hard sometimes to establish certain habits or to make things stick. Is there things in your research that you've come across that would be tools for people to help them establish these or help make things stick more in their brain as it relates to habits?
Yeah, just as we think of habits as I want to go to the gym and I want to make that a good habit, or I want to eat a salad with dinner every night to make that a healthy habit, your brain has habits too. And that's essentially what that
Mm.
autopilot thinking is. It's your brain engaging in
Mm.
habits. It's your brain saying, I've done this before. I know exactly how to do this, and I can do it quickly and effectively and efficiently without a lot of resources. And so the
Mm.
goal is you want to create good neurobiological habits, just like you do health habits. And one of the things that helps with that is just like in your behavioral goals, repetition. So if you try to do something a certain way every time, it's going to become habit. I think one
Mm,
challenge, as you know, with leadership and organizational team building and everything is that people might jump into meetings and they don't talk to each other. They don't foster communication.
mm,
And we know that when we foster communication, that actually creates camaraderie in the brain. It makes your brain see these people as people in your social group who you can trust and people
mm,
who have reciprocated with you. How are you doing today? I'm great. Thank you. How are you doing? And just that, and being able to reciprocate is also an indicator to your brain. I can trust this person and I can work with this person. And one small habit that you can create for your teams and organizations is simply take 5 minutes at the beginning of every meeting and just ask how everyone's doing. Don't
mm,
take, yeah, I'm okay, I'm fine. How are you? Really ask them, hey, how are your kids doing? Or I know you
mm,
went to that festival last weekend. How was that? I know you've been growing a garden. How is that going? Are your vegetables coming in this year? How are the tomatoes? And asking those
mm.
specific questions that are not the surface level, "How are you?" "Fine, thanks, you too."
Right, yes.
They're really just a little bit deeper than that. That actually warms up the room. That actually
Yes,
creates a sense of community, creates that
yes.
sense of camaraderie in your brain, and really makes it more likely that meeting will be communicative, will be
Yeah.
open in that communication. People will feel
Mm,
freer to say what they need to
mm,
say, and we know that bad things happen in organizations when people feel like they can't speak freely. And it
agreed.
will create a more supportive atmosphere too. So, just something as simple as that. And you might have to, for example, specifically set aside 5 minutes at the beginning of every meeting and tell people, "Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this at every meeting." But after a few meetings, that'll become a good positive habit too for your organization, and in everyone's brains, that'll become a good positive habit too. They'll say, "We start this meeting by caring about each other."
I think that's a fascinating point, and I think that so many people will overlook these types of behaviors as something that doesn't matter. What matters is that we get to this thing, we solve this problem, this 800-pound gorilla in the room, we're gonna do this, we're gonna wrangle this thing, we're gonna get it done. And while that is absolutely the goal, ultimately, to make the goal successful and to get to that a whole lot easier, and like you said, more openly, it's the little things that you're saying you can do a habit at the beginning of a meeting. If I said it a different way, if you came to someone in a leadership position, you said, "Hey, look, I can tell you one thing that you need to do. If I could tell you a secret that you would do at the beginning of every meeting that would make your meeting 20 or 30% more productive, would you do it?" And they'd be like, "Yeah." But then you say, "Hey, look, you need to open your meeting by just asking people here." "Well, I mean, we don't have time for that." It's like, no, no, no. You have no idea. You don't have time not to do it.
Yeah, you
And
don't have
so,
time for a wasted meeting.
yes, exactly, exactly. And so I feel like that's such a valuable piece of advice is to take the time to do little things. And to your point, I think that we want to create a habits. If your meetings are habitually not that way right now, you need to be thinking about, like you said, how can we intentionally engage? Just like hanging up your keys and saying, "I'm going to hang my keys up here," and you're intentionally hanging them up every time you for the next 5 or 6 times. How can you do that when you engage in a meeting? And it might be that you literally, like you were saying, put it on the agenda the first 5 minutes. Maybe you don't put be nice to people, but maybe you say warm up, just the warm up. We're going to have a warm up on the agenda. And you put warm up on the agenda. It may not mean anything but to anybody but you if you're leading the meeting, but at least you will see that and be able to be more intentional, whatever the word is, whether it's warm up or something else, to make sure that you're engaging with people for just 5 minutes before the meeting gets started so that you unlock people's brains and make it a space a little bit safer or more trusting, an environment that's more trusting. So I think that's fantastic advice. I would love to, and we've got a couple other things I want to get to, but I would love to also understand because leaders, I think, deal with negativity a lot. A lot of times, leaders are going to be going through and leading the charge through change, and change is a scary place for some people to live and be and operate in at work. We're going through a lot of in the economy and all the things that you're seeing in politics and everything. There's a lot of people's just feeling like there's a lot of change, and so some of that can propagate negative thinking. And I know that some people have negative patterns that they are going through, like you're saying, in in their brain. So what advice or counsel can you give to our listeners and specifically leaders as if they struggle with this negative thinking, self-thinking, that kind of
Yeah,
thing?
just like we talked about good neurobiological habits in your brain, there are bad neurobiological habits in your brain too. And when we say bad, we really mean things that are bad for your health, bad for your well-being and your mental health, bad for your job, bad for your home life and your friends and your family, bad for your relationships, bad for everything. And negative thinking is one of those. And there was
Mm.
a simple study that a while ago that showed that people who were more optimistic live longer. Oh, do you want to live longer? And it sounds
Let's figure
really
this out.
simple and reductive, but that outlook on life makes a huge difference. And that's
Mm,
because when you have negative thinking as a bad habit, what's going to happen is your brain is going to essentially be more likely to slip into fight or flight. So maybe there's a
mm,
meeting coming up and they're talking about change. And you might think, oh, this is going to be terrible. And we're all going to get laid off. And this is going to happen. And that's going to happen. It's going to be awful. And your stomach balls up into a knot and you get sweaty
mm,
palms and your heart starts racing and your brain releases a chemical, a neurotransmitter called cortisol. It's a stress hormone. And cortisol is really taps in when bad things are happening to you. And your cortisol levels mean that your ability to remember and perform are actually diminished. So the more stressed
mm,
out and the more negative you are, the lower your performance is going to be.
mm.
Cortisol is also responsible for putting on additional fat layers around the midsection. So
Oh,
it's not great for your health either physically.
thank you for your help.
And I
Yeah.
think one thing is to and we don't want to have the Pollyanna effect either. We don't want people to walk around being optimistic about everything. But what we want is
Right.
just for people to see a little light at the end of the tunnel in a situation. And when you could
Mm,
just see that little light at the end of the tunnel and have a little bit of realistic positivity, that creates a good habit in your brain. And that good
mm,
habit, just like your bad habit is followed with maladaptive neurotransmitters, that good habit can be followed with good transmitters. So when you have
mm,
that positive outlook and see positive things, you're more likely to experience joy. And those can be small
mm,
joys. It can be small
mm.
victories. It can be, I just got a new supply of my favorite pens in today. It
Yeah.
could be even, wow, that meeting wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Right.
But those
Right.
will lead to an increase in the release of dopamine and serotonin and really reduced stress too. So I would say change is difficult. Change can be seen as threatening. Change can be seen as risky. One thing leaders need to do is take the temperature of people on their teams and in their organizations and find out
Mm,
how accepting versus resistant they are to change. And actually, where they
mm,
fall along that is going to directly speak to how their brain's going to process that information. And that's
mm.
really important for knowing which techniques to use to persuade people to engage in change. If you don't know whether their brain is turned on or turned off to change, you don't know how to speak to them and get them on board. So I think
Oh,
taking the
wow.
temperature is a really big thing. I think another big thing is there are, let's say, if there's a round of layoffs coming, nobody feels good about that. And that's okay.
Mm,
Nobody should feel good about that. But I think
sure.
the leadership showing that they are emotionally invested in this also is really important, so that it's important for leaders to share the pain
Mm,
and also to share why they're doing it. Research shows
right.
that
There's a
people
reason.
are more likely to go along with something if they simply know why. How many
Why?
times
Yeah.
do people tell us, yes, no, I'm not doing that, I don't, or something like that, or just go do it, and they don't tell us why? And the thing is,
Mm,
our brains don't like mysteries. Our brains like
yes.
answers. And
That's exactly
so
right.
whether you know it or not, every time you talk to somebody, they want to know why you're doing something or
Mm,
why you're asking them to do something. So if there's a round of layoffs coming, be sure to go in detail about why. Be sure to make yourself personally available, whether that's several meetings in individual departments or whether that's a town hall via Zoom, make yourself personally available and at more than one time. When it comes to enacting change, people are usually in shock at first, and their questions
Right.
and thoughts that are deeper than just their initial reaction are going to come later. So you don't just need a one drop of we're going to have layoffs or there's going to be a reorg. You need to actually follow
Yeah.
that up, because when you follow that up with additional opportunities to directly communicate with people, then you're letting them know that they are important, they are being seen, they're being heard, and that you
Mm.
care about them. When you
Right.
take that
No.
simple
Yeah.
step of showing people you care about them, they're more likely to be receptive to change.
I love it. I love it. And I think that's totally true. Man, that's really good stuff. I think there was so many things you said there that captured my attention. Number one, it's not you were not saying that everybody has to be optimistic all the time, Pollyanna. There's nothing wrong, nothing bad. But I do think it's like what you were describing when you were describing it. Sounds to me like you're saying it's the truth without judgment with a dash of hope. That light at the end of the tunnel. I want to be honest about what's going on, but I can do that without judging and just say this is the truth, and then dash of hope at the end, the little light at the tunnel. It's, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, and that just keeps you on just the right side of optimism, not Pollyanna, but not into negative space cortisol and all the negative things that come with it. So I think I love that. I love how you describe that. It's from I read a long time ago this book called The Psychology of Influence. I think it's by Robert Cialdini, and he was talking
Rob
exactly
Cialdini,
about what you're
he's
saying.
the number
Yeah, yeah,
one
or Cialdini.
research scientist involved in persuasion and influence.
Yeah, and I just remember there was something in his book. It's been a long time since I read it, but it was something like they went up and asked students at a copy machine. This was back when you had to make copies for class, I guess, this was a while back, which is sad that I remember that. But standing in line at a copier at a college, and they said some people would just break in front of the person, and other people would say, "Hey, can I go in front of you? I've got to be late for class." The experience and the likelihood the person was like okay with you getting in front of them was like way higher if you told the reason why. And they said what was crazy was it didn't even matter what the reason why. Some of them they would go and say, because I'm late for class or because I need to do this homework to get it done in time. And then other ones they would go in and say, because I don't feel like waiting, or because it would just be like random, because my mom's coming this weekend. And it's not even has nothing to do with the copyright. And they still were more likely to let them in front just because they said a reason why, even if it was nonsensical. Always that stuck with me is, man, the power of why is a real thing. And so I thought that's just a great point that you laid out.
It's a real thing, and that also brings up real
Yeah.
quick another aspect of that, which
Yeah.
is that we want to help other people. And when
Mm.
somebody says, "Hey, would you let me go in front of you because I'm going to be late to class?" That gives us an opportunity to help people. And remember, your brain
Mm.
is selfish. So when you help
Yes.
people, you get a little dopamine squirt and your brain says, "I'm such a good person. I did such a good thing.
Ah,
This is what I did. I helped this
ah,
person out." And we want to help
interesting.
people.
Yeah.
So the why helps with that too. If you tell people why something is happening, then their act of responding to you is them being helpful to you. And that's good for their brain.
Yeah. Yeah, the reciprocity. I find it fascinating that we're wired that way. And it's amazing that you just said that, because like when you think about it, we're selfish, and in our selfishness, we're wired to be happy when we help other people. Isn't that the wildest paradox? Like our brains are a little bit selfish, and yet we're wired to where we get a quote unquote paid with dopamine, mental pay with dopamine hits when we help someone else. So it's like this counterbalancing force where you would think if we're selfish, we'd be like, no, I'm helping myself. I'm standing in front of the line and I'm going to get what I want. But instead, we actually feel better when we help someone else.
In the cave people days with our ancestors, that made a lot of sense, because
Mm.
if you're hungry and I offer you some of my berries I've gathered, then according to the laws of reciprocity, which our brain does abide by, you owe me some berries,
Mm.
Dallas. So
Mm.
when I'm hungry,
Mm.
or the next time you have some berries, you're going to come share them with me. So it's a
Yeah.
little bit of an
Yeah.
investment in our future too.
It's an investment in our future. Yeah. If I pay it forward, it comes
That's
back.
right.
What I pay forward comes back. And man, that's such a great thing. That's a great point. I want to take a break for a second and jump in, because we dove straight into the conversation. I was so excited about it, but I got to get back to this deal, because you actually performed with Madonna. You got to, we can't just leave that, because there's some listeners right now clawing the walls going, what, you better tell me about how that happened, because I can't, you don't leave me hanging. I don't want to get comments after the show about not covering that. So tell us, how in the world does one end up on stage with Madonna?
Very carefully and through chance. So this was a number of years ago, and I am a huge Madonna fan. Always have been since I was a
Nice.
little kid. I would
Nice.
blast her music on my boombox and be in my room dancing and singing.
Yeah.
And
Material girl,
to
man.
me,
Material
she
girl.
was the ultimate force for confidence and for going after your dreams. And these are messages that just spoke right to me as a little girl. And so I try to go to every one of her concerts. I go to multiple shows per concert. I'm a big fan, and I'm not alone. We have a little community of those of us that see each other on the floor at her shows.
Wow.
And in 3 tours ago, I was in Washington, D.C., and my husband and I were on the floor about 6 rows back, out from the catwalk, and we were having a good time with everybody. And before the show, most people arrived pretty early, so we were walking around and saying hello to everybody, and met up with her manager, Guy O'Siri, said hello to him. He remembered me. Did I mention I go in costume?
Oh. Are you when you're going, and you going something that like an outfit that she's worn on a previous
That's
tour,
exactly
or
it. Yeah. So one of my
really?
favorite tours was the
Wow.
Confessions tour in 2006. And after that tour, one of my coping strategies for dealing with writing my dissertation is that I would take breaks by making myself a replica of her costume. And the cool thing about her costume too is it's actually an homage to ABBA, and she sampled some ABBA in that. So it's a white unitard with purple glittery stripes and white go-go boots that are platform, and a white satin cape with disco balls on the inside, and it says dancing queen on the outside. And her manager knew who I was and had taken a couple pictures of me and put it up on her Facebook page. And so I've gone for almost 20 years in this costume. This is my costume.
That is awesome.
So we're took some pictures with some people beforehand, sit there through the show. The show is amazing. And actually, before the show, I was actually able to meet the woman who designed this costume. They introduced me to her. So that was a huge thrill for me. And that was just such an honor. The show goes on. The show's about 3/4 of the way through, and we get into the last act. There are, at this particular show, 4 acts, and we're hanging out, enjoying a good time, dancing, singing, and I get one of these. Tap on the shoulder. And I was several people in, and so it had been one person tapping another person, and I look and they say, there's a guy out here that wants to talk with you. And so I make my way out to the aisle as Madonna's singing and performing. And there was a very official looking security guard and somebody with a microphone and a whole setup. And they said, would you like to go on stage with Madonna?
Do I dress this way? Because I would say no.
There's only one answer, and that answer is yes. And I said, yes, absolutely. And they said, okay, we're going to need you to take your cape off. And I thought, I don't know about that. And I thought, I'm going to feel a little shy wearing just a white unitard in front of 18,000 people I don't know. And they said, we have no idea what's going to happen, but there's a good chance she'll put her arm on your back. And I said, oh, she's going to touch my back? Okay, I'll get over that. No problem.
Wow.
And I had no idea what was going to happen. I had about one song, and then she pulled me up on stage with her. And she started dancing. And I did exactly what she was doing and did the same dance she was doing.
Oh my goodness. All those years of dance training paid off. You just right in the moment on the stage, you could dance with Madonna.
Yeah. Awesome. And she asked my name. She remembered my name.
Wow.
3 months later, she called me out in several other concerts. And to this day, she still remembers who I am and will give me a little wink or a wave when she can. And yes, it was the culmination of all of my experiences. So my experience as a dancer and a speaker made me comfortable on stage. And I also tapped into my brain to leverage all of my neuroscience experience and training to figure out how to win that situation, because there
Mm.
was a really good chance that I could have fallen on my face in my 6-inch platform boots, or made a fool out of
Mm.
myself when she was dancing, or not said the right thing when she'd spoke with me and talked with me on stage. But I
Mm.
leveraged exactly what I knew, and that first thing I did is I said, "I need to dampen down this fight or flight response." So, I took a few.
'Cause this is an intense
It's
moment for you,
intense.
especially 'cause
It's the most intense
you're
moment
yeah.
in my life.
Oh my
And still to
god.
this
So what
day.
how did you but you were aware, so from a neuroscience perspective, you were aware and you were coming into that. What did you do to how did you calm
Yeah,
that down a little bit
so
in your
I
brain?
calmed myself down by taking several deep breaths and doing some stretching, and that reduced the cortisol in my system, took the stress hormones down, reduced my heart made my palms a little less sweaty, all of that good stuff. And then
Love
that
that.
feeling we get when we're a little anxious and a little nervous, I
Mhm.
flipped the switch on that. And rather than feeling
Mm.
anxious or nervous, I felt excited. So I took those
Mm.
internal bodily cues and reinterpreted them, because the
Mm.
cue is there in your body, but your brain can reinterpret it however it wants. And so I
Yes,
turned that
yes.
into excitement. I also leveraged what's called my semantic memory network. This is the part of your
Oh,
memory that's like your brain's Wikipedia, all the knowledge you know
okay.
about everything in the whole world. And I knew a lot about Madonna. So I knew that she respects bold, confident people. And that's what I wanted to
Oh,
portray.
wow.
I know that she's witty
Ah.
and that she's a badass. And that's also
Mhm.
what I wanted
Yep.
to portray. And so I went
Okay.
up there with that in mind. I'm going to be bold, I'm going to be
Wow.
brave, and I'm going to be confident. And that's how I
Yeah.
was able to succeed on stage and relate to my favorite artist of all time.
Wow. Man, that's awesome. I love how you described that and how intentional you were about that. That's epic. That's epic being on stage with somebody you've just seen your whole life and just admired the whole time. And then also just to be able to have the presence in the moment to do what you already know that you should be doing. I think there's because some people would just again dismiss the little things and say, I'm just gonna run up on stage. Oh my gosh, it's Madonna. And you're like, nope. I'm gonna own this moment, and this is what I need to do. And you just go through your mental checklist,
Yeah, that's the
and I just
benefit
think this is
of
so good.
being able to tap in and unlock your super brain, what
Yeah.
your small neurobiological superpowers are, and those small superpowers add up to big effects. And I'm glad I did, because I've actually given a TEDx talk on this, and I've given 3 TEDx
Mm,
talks, and that
mm.
YouTube with Madonna has more views than all of my TEDx talks combined. So it's
Wow.
really
Are
a
you
thing that I
serious?
didn't
That's
just go up
hilarious.
there and fall on my feet or fall on my face and flub it up. So it was worth carefully thinking about for those 2.5 minutes I had, what I can do.
Mm.
And so a little
Oh, it's so good.
intentional effort on how you can maximize a situation for your benefit really pays off in the end.
I love that actually. We started the show going into details about how to kind of manage your mind if you're in a bad space, but I wanna kind of as we go towards the close, I wanna really come full circle and go into talking about you've given multiple TEDx talks. You're talking about the super brain and your superpowers, tapping into that. We have listeners that are leaders, coaches, business owners, organizational owners. They're in nonprofits and all over the world. And so I would love for you to talk about anything that we haven't covered that you think would be beneficial to coaches and leaders in organizations that would have to do with really tapping in to their superpowers in that super brain.
Yeah, I think a big thing that does relate to that Madonna experience is confidence. So
Mm.
confidence grows because of your memories, and this isn't something most people realize. So
Huh.
how do I know that I can take on a new challenge? Well, because I have a memory of dancing on stage with Madonna. And if I can
Mm.
do that, I can do
Mm.
this new challenge. And confidence is something we can build and grow. So you can start
Mm.
with something small. Maybe you had a really good meeting with somebody in your organization. And then you have to go have a big sales call about the same topic or talk with the board about the same topic. or talk with a big public audience about the same topic. You know you can do that because you've already done it. You've had a small conversation, and that conversation has shown you success. And it's really important to make good memories. And when you have a small success, stop and anchor that memory and say, wow, I did a really good job. Give yourself a pat on the back. Take a moment to smile and relish the moment. And maybe that takes 30 seconds. Maybe that takes an hour. It takes for you whatever it takes. And that means you'll make a memory. And that memory will spur confidence in other directions. And this is important for people in your team too. They might not realize that small victories build big memories and grow your confidence. And so when somebody does really well, let them know, hey, you did such a great job with that. You really nailed that project. You really did an awesome job with that client. I want you to take a minute and celebrate yourself. I just think you did an amazing job. It could be with a small gift card. It could be verbal praise. It could be with an ice cream party. It could be anything. But let them know so that they will make that memory. And when we have small successes, it's really important to celebrate. Because when you celebrate, you're tapping into your brain's reward circuitry. And when you tap into your brain's reward circuitry, it doesn't just make you feel good with happy neurotransmitters and a little bit of a dopamine squirt, which we all love a good dopamine squirt. But that also taps into your brain's intrinsic motivation. So when you celebrate a small victory, your brain is going to tell itself, oh, I did something good. I want to go do that again. And that means you're going to make it more likely for you or your team members to engage in whatever behaviors landed you that success.
I love that. And I love it for a lot of different reasons. Number one, I love celebrating because it's fun and let's do it. We should celebrate more.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons in our coaching system, the last question is, what's one thing you want to commit to get 1% better this month? And we always tell the leaders, you now have a reason to celebrate with someone at least once a month. If they accomplish this 1%, which could be like watching some YouTube videos on how to use Microsoft Teams, it doesn't have to be a big thing. But what I'm excited to hear about is your explanation from a neuroscience perspective of why that's so important, because it's bringing it back to that person saying, congratulations, you did this great thing, even if it was 1%. And I think that it's just so powerful. I think that's great advice. I think that's great advice that leaders can use to unlock their superpowers. Now, one last thing I want to talk to you about, because you made a great comment before the show, and we asked what's some advice for people that are high performers and different things like that, and what would keep people from that. And you made an interesting comment about ego and high performers not being a victim of their own ego in a sense.
Yeah, so this is certainly, I'm not meaning to implicate every leader in this, but people who are high performers and people who are leaders usually were able to get to those positions because they're pretty confident in their abilities and they're pretty confident in their skills and their ability to do the job. And that's fantastic. We want confidence.
Yeah.
But the challenge is when confidence breeds over to overconfidence and then ego takes over. And so when ego takes over, that means we can have what's called illusory confidence. We can be confident about everything we're doing, even if we have no reason to be. And when that happens, that's when losses come in. You might lose quality members of your organization because you're not seeing what they can offer. You might lose clients because you assume you already have them when you don't. You might lose opportunities, lose profit, lose productivity because you're overly confident, and that ego actually causes blind spots. And one of the things ego does that's really interesting is in the brain, it actually shuts off curiosity. Because curiosity is the desire to know more and the desire to resolve an imbalance. And if you're very overconfident, then there's no imbalance. You're confident about so many things. And so I think a really important check to make sure they're not being driven by ego is to step back and engage in curiosity. And curiosity, it's really cool. It activates this area of your brain called the anterior cingulate cortex. And it's really, really deep in your brain. And it's kind of a gateway in your brain. And this anterior cingulate cortex routes information to where it needs to go. So if you're overconfident, it's not going to be curious and it's going to say, do the usual thing. And then you actually get into autopilot thinking. But if you stop and you ask questions, well, is this really the best way to do this? I know we've done this 20 times. Is there something we're not thinking about? Then your anterior cingulate routes that information somewhere else. And you get out of your autopilot thinking and you start thinking in new and interesting ways. And that essentially keeps your mind open and it keeps your eyes open to what's happening with people in your organization, what's happening to your business, what's happening with your clients, what's happening with your sales teams. By constantly engaging in curiosity, we're not only constantly learning and growing, but keeping our eyes open to the possibilities of the people, places, and things around us.
Oh, I love that. That is so good. Well said. And I think too, and I'm going to go a step further, and you said it could happen to any leader, but you're not talking about every leader. And I agree with that. But I would say too, specifically to leaders, and this is coming from a former chemist and engineer. So I can say this, I'm part of the crew. Anybody that are paid to have the right answer, right? Like a lot of times, this has been my personal experience. If I'm an engineer, if I'm a medical doctor, if I'm a lawyer, or I'm just paid to be the person that people come and say, hey, what is this? I feel like in those areas, specifically those fields, it is even harder not to fall victim. You've got to know this formula to make this work this way, and you're supposed to have the answer. And I think that from your description, the healthy engineer, the healthy medical doctor, the healthy lawyer is coming at that saying, let me ask really great questions and not assume that I know because of this and this. I'm listening to the person asking these great questions and I'm open and curious versus the person that's definitely more closed-minded and I've filled up my bucket with all these inputs and then it has to be something I pull out of that bucket, right? And if it's not, I can't even see it because I've assumed that that's all there is because it's what's in my head. And it's so refreshing because you explain that so well. And it should be refreshing if you are an engineer or a medical doctor or a lawyer or a business owner. It's not just limited to those. I've just had those experiences in my own life working directly with engineers that and I put myself in that category, get so caught up in the right answer that we lack the curiosity to actually get to the right answer, to the most effective answer. And so I think you did a great job of explaining that. Yeah. So thank you for that. And thank you for your wisdom today. And man, it's just been a pleasure. Just flown by. We just put an hour in the books. It's just boom. I could spend another hour.
Yeah, we could do another 3 or 4 hours easily.
Yeah. We'll just have to have you back on you'll be our last 10% resident neuroscientist. We'll have you on again. But Dr. Collins, we just appreciate you being on here and sharing your wisdom with our listeners. I know they enjoyed it. And I want to ask you 2 things. We want to let people know where to find you in case they want to have you as a speaker at one of their events and connect with you. So please let people know how they can connect with you.
Yeah, you can connect with me on my website, which is drheathercollins.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn. So that's a great way to connect with me also. And we can keep the conversation going. Just search for Dr. Heather Collins and look for my face.
Right. Fantastic. Fantastic. Oh, and the last thing we always ask the guests on the last 10%, who, and I think I know the answer, but who would they like to hear as a guest on the last 10%? So Dr. Collins, who would you like to hear us get as a guest?
I would love to hear, to no surprise, Madonna again. She is just such a fountain of bravery and wisdom, especially when it comes for inspiring young people and really pushing the boundaries. And she reminds us that playing it safe is no way to be the queen of pop or the queen of anything.
Yes, I would agree with that. Well, I will reach out and say, listen, the guest that that comes to a lot of your shows and is a neuroscientist has said you got to be on. So we'll see if she takes our request. That'd be amazing. Actually, that'd be great. And we'll definitely give you a call if they get back, her people get back to us. That'd be great. Well, thank you again, Dr. Collins. Thank you for being a guest, sharing your wisdom, your insights, and we just appreciate you being on the last 10%.
Thank you, Dallas. I appreciate it. This was wonderful. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks for joining us today on The Last 10%. We hope you found today's content engaging and encouraging. Remember to subscribe to the podcast to hear the latest episodes and help us out by rating and reviewing us so others will join our community. We release new episodes every other Tuesday. This podcast can be found globally in any podcasting app, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Amazon. Subscribe today. Plus, visit our website, join our email list, and discover resources and info for your business and team at thinkmovethrive.com. Thanks again for listening to The Last 10%.